Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the Citrix U.S. Public Sector Get in the Know webinar on Actionable Insights with Citrix Analytics. Presenting today will be Matthew Varghese and Brett Engel, myself, and Rich Morrison. Network engineers are here as well. Important bit of housekeeping. Please put all your questions into the chat window and we'll respond to those as soon as possible. If we can't get to the question immediately, we'll respond via email to you. And at that point, Rich, this is now your presentation. Next, to you.
All right, thank you, Brett. I appreciate that. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending where you're coming in from. As Brett mentioned, we have a great session today for you, everyone. We're going to be talking about Citrix Analytics, which is a cloud-based service that provides customers actionable insights to detect and prevent security threats, such as rogue or unusual user behavior. So today we're going to have Matt Voorhees, who's the Director of Product Management for Citrix Analytics, who's going to provide a high-level overview of our solution and give us a guided demo on how the solution will look in your environment. As we go through the content, feel free to ask questions into the chat. We'll be taking questions throughout the conversation as well as towards the end. And if you're interested in more webinars such as this, please feel free to stay towards the end. We will have more information on how you can sign up and register for upcoming webinars. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce Matthew Voorhees.
Excellent. Thanks, Rich, and thanks, Brett. I'm going to go ahead and get started with Citrix Analytics. I'm going to start off with a service overview and then walk you through a short demo. And after that, talk about a few advanced features as well. So Citrix Analytics, just in terms of, just to give you all some context. When we talk about analytics, we often think about analytics tools like Splunk or Google Analytics, which allow you to collect a lot of data and then visualize it. Citrix Analytics, on the other hand, uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to analyze a huge volume of data and then show you alerts and notifications that actually matter. So Citrix Analytics essentially is a cloud service, like what Rich said. It's a cloud service, but it supports on-prem as well as hybrid environments. So the way it works is it collects telemetry and control plane data that is sent by Citrix products to the Citrix Cloud Control Plane. It collects this data, analyzes it using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and then displays relevant alerts and notifications in the various different service UIs. So we have security analytics, we have performance analytics, and we have operations analytics. Today, security and operations are available, and that's what I'm going to demo. And then performance is coming soon. So that little bit of a background, let me go ahead and talk about some of the key features of Citrix Analytics, and I tend to call them the key concepts. I'm going to spend a few minutes on this particular slide, and then that will make it easier to follow the demo. So Citrix Analytics, the first and most important thing is Citrix Analytics is a turnkey solution. Now, most Citrix customers, and I've been with Citrix for 15 years, I've worked with customers pretty much throughout that period. And for the longest time, the feedback from customers was that Citrix is hard to set up. So when we built analytics, and I'm the platform product manager for analytics, and I'm also the part of the founding team that started the product. So a couple of years ago when we started development, we decided to focus a lot of our efforts on making the service extremely easy to use. So getting started with Citrix Analytics is very simple. All it requires is for the administrator to go click a button. Now, that is where I want to draw your attention to privacy and data security. So getting started with analytics is very simple. But the reason why we still need an administrator to go in and click on a button is because we need your consent to process your data. So basically, Citrix Analytics, as I said earlier, processes telemetry data that Citrix products send to the Citrix cloud anyway. We process that data and give you some value back in return. But we don't process that data without your consent. So the data still goes to Citrix cloud, but without your consent, we don't touch that data. So that is what we mean by turnkey. So when you turn the key to turn on analytics, you're not just turning on analytics, you're also giving us consent to process your data. So that's the first key takeaway. The second key takeaway is that analytics is a highly accurate solution. The reason why I say that is because analytics, Citrix Analytics processes a huge volume of control plane data, but uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to look for anomalies. Now, this is very different from what a lot of other analytics products do, because most other analytics products rely on visualizations to convey anomalies or to convey trends to their end users. The problem is that human beings are human beings, and there's only so much attention that a human being can provide to a visualization. So data visualization is not as accurate as processing by a machine. So Citrix Analytics uses machine learning models to analyze data and to accurately alert your administrators when something goes wrong. But the most significant feature that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that Citrix Analytics is a closed loop solution. So it's not just an alerting system. It's not just a dashboard for viewing alerts. It's also a system that allows you to take action on the users when something anomalous is detected. So those are the three key takeaways. So if there's one thing, or if there's one slide that you remember from this entire presentation, I would love that this be it. So the three key takeaways are Citrix Analytics is a turnkey solution. It uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to process data. And most importantly, it's a closed loop system where you as an administrator can set up policies to take action on a user who's found to be exhibiting anomalous behavior. Now, coming back to what we support. So Citrix Analytics, as the name implies, uses data that only comes from Citrix products. So we use telemetry data, control plane data being sent by Citrix products to Citrix Cloud. We just process that data and give you value back in return. So Citrix Analytics supports on-prem environments. It supports public cloud-based environments, and we also support hybrid, hybrid environments. Now, let's look at security analytics. The thing about security analytics, and this is the first service that we launched late last year. So security analytics was something that we invested in first. The other services that we're working on include performance analytics, and performance analytics is something that administrators are often, more interested in. But we decided to go with Citrix Analytics, with security analytics first, because it is the hardest thing to do, and it is often the one feature that Citrix administrators can actually help the organization with more easily. So before we get into that, I have a couple of questions for this audience. So Rich and Brett, can we roll out the questions, please? Or the poll?
Yeah, let's take this. No problem. Thank you, Matthew. So we're going to take right now, everyone, just take a few minutes to produce a poll. So if you can bear with us, a poll will show up on your screen, and you can answer these questions to the best of your ability. We'll appreciate it. It's going to take about another minute or so to collect this data. All right, we're going to be closing the polls shortly here. Thank you to everyone who has responded.
Excellent. So this this gives me a very good idea of the audience. So with this information, so folks, thanks a lot for answering the question. So we'll move ahead. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about, like I said, is security analytics. And security analytics is security analytics is a feature that helps Citrix administrators provide additional value to their organizations. So what do I mean by that? So think about it this way: whether you're managing, NetScalers or ADCs, as we used to call them earlier, but it's all Citrix networking today. So whether you're managing NetScalers or XenApp and XenDesktop, or you're managing XenMobile, ShareFile, I'm using all the old names, but the point I'm trying to make here is that as a Citrix administrator, the Citrix products that you administer actually have a very good insight into how your users behave. So whether it's a NetScaler that is tracking the user's network behavior, when they logged in, what kind of apps they launched, to say apps and desktops that knows exactly what apps they used, or content collaboration that knows how much data they uploaded and downloaded. Citrix products sit in key vantage points in your environment. So as a Citrix administrator, you actually have the ability today with Citrix Analytics to have a more informed conversation with your security teams as well as your exec leadership. So, and that is why we decided to lead with security analytics. It's essentially to provide our customers with additional value using the data that they are already generating, and in many cases sending to Citrix Cloud. So let's give you a simple example. The weakest link in an organization today is still human behavior. So people continue to make, I would say, silly mistakes, right? So for example, the security teams keep warning employees about not clicking on links because they might be phishing attacks. People still go ahead and click on those links. So Citrix Analytics is designed to protect your organization against these kinds of human mistakes. Now, the problem with the products that are available today is that they simply collect a lot of these events and present them back to the administrators, especially people who sit in the SOCs, right? I mean, the security, the SecOps or the InfoSec people are the ones who get inundated with a lot of raw data. So what Citrix Analytics does is that it takes the data generated by the products that you folks manage, analyzes that data, and gives the SecOps people insights that they can directly act on. Unfortunately, today, we can, pretty confidently say that 93% of security teams are overwhelmed and unable to triage threats because the threats are presented to them in the form of competing alerts. So Citrix Analytics kind of mitigates that by taking all that raw data, processing it using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and then presenting that data back to these administrators in the form of very clean, very simple alerts. And you
Matthew,
folks as Citrix, yeah.
You mentioned that the human intervention could be a big reason for a lot of these security vulnerabilities being exploited. I'll be interested. You mentioned a couple of things such as phishing attacks, as well as ransomware. I'll be interested to see from the audience how many people are very familiar with those terms. So at this point, I'm going to open up another poll just to get from the audience perspective how familiar they are with these terms, and we can get a better understanding of how Citrix Analytics can address these concerns.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Go ahead, Rich.
Once again, everyone, we're going to have a poll up. If you can answer to the best of your ability, just looking to understand how familiar are you with phishing attacks and the term ransomware. We'll have this up for another minute or so. Thank you to everyone that has submitted their poll. We're going to be closing it. It looks like these two terms are very hot topics and very familiar with our audience here, Matthew.
Right. Excellent. Hey, thanks for running that, Rich. The poll results are very, very useful. So for those of you who are either not very familiar with it or somewhat familiar, which is a good chunk of people on the call, I'll just go over this very quickly. So phishing attacks are attacks where malicious outsiders send emails with links to people within a corporate environment. The link itself might look very familiar. So for example, say a bank link, right? Instead of spelling citibank.com, they might spell it as CITIE bank.com. Now people might, in a hurry, miss the spelling error and go and click on the link, and that is when, so when employees click on a phishing link, it often ends up downloading malware onto their devices, or it takes them to sites that they shouldn't be going to, and in that way, external, threat operators end up getting access to your corporate environment. So those are phishing attacks. With ransomware, now ransomware can be delivered through a phishing attack. It can also be delivered in other ways. But essentially, ransomware is the new way of collecting ransom. So some malicious code gets delivered to an employee. Employee runs the code. It could be an app. It could be a macro. People run the code, and suddenly their devices get locked. And then the threat actors, as we call them, then start demanding ransom to get the machines unlocked. So these attacks have been pretty big in the past couple of years, and a lot of these happen when people do things that they're not supposed to. So it's just basic human error. Security teams keep warning employees about it, but people often don't pay heed to these warnings. But it's human error. Like we said, human behavior is still the weakest link in corporate security. So with that, let me move over to how Citrix Analytics can help protect your organization against threats like these. So I'm going to start off by demoing the key features, and then go back to talking about some of the more advanced features. So I have a demo environment already open, and Rich, can you confirm you can that you can see my screen?
Yes, coming in clear.
All right, perfect. Okay, so this is the Citrix Analytics security analytics screen. Now, as you can see here, pretty straightforward. You know, as I mentioned earlier, you're not going to see a ton of raw data and a lot of charts on the screen. We've tried to keep it very simple, very straightforward. So what you as a administrator can do even today is log on to Citrix Cloud if you've got a Citrix Cloud account. Log on to Citrix Cloud, go to Citrix Analytics, and the moment you go to Citrix Analytics, this is what you're going to see. Now, in most cases, your screen might not be you know, all lit up like this, and I hope it is not, because this is a sample organization that has a lot of risky users in it. In reality, this is what your screen should look like. It should practically have no risky users in it, you know, although you know you might have a lot of discovered users. So Citrix Analytics categorizes all the users into high, medium, and low risk users by giving them a risk score. Before we get into that, let's look at the first feature we spoke about, which is Citrix Analytics is a turnkey solution. It's very easy to set up. So as a Citrix administrator, in all probability, you will be responsible for setting up analytics. The reason I say that is because you as a Citrix admin own all your Citrix assets. You're responsible for managing all of them. So in all probability, you're going to be called in to set up analytics. So setting up analytics, as I said, is extremely, extremely simple. By default, in your user interface, in your UI, all your data sources will be turned off. So what is a data source? So Citrix Analytics takes telemetry data and control plane data that is being generated by your Citrix products and processes that to provide security insights. So that is where we start with. So all your Citrix Analytics compatible products and services will be displayed as data sources on the Citrix Analytics screen. So as a Citrix administrator, all you need to do is go to the screen, and it's going to take a minute or so to populate because we make an API call to the Citrix Cloud control plane. We make a list of all the Citrix Analytics compatible products and services and then display them here. So once that routine runs, your page will get populated with a few tiles like this, and by default, all of them will be turned off. In my case, they're all turned off. So what you need to do is then go and turn on data processing. In this case, I'm showing you how you can turn it off. So the moment you go and turn on data processing for all the data sources that are in your environment, it takes Citrix Analytics a couple of weeks to build a baseline. So this is where I'm going to you know, give a little more insight into how Citrix Analytics works. So I keep talking about telemetry data and I keep talking about control plane data. What do I mean by that? So if you you know, manage an on-premises environment, then chances are that you're not sending any data to Citrix today. So in terms of what I just mentioned, you are not sending any telemetry data to Citrix, and you are not sending any control plane data to Citrix. On the other hand, if you are a Citrix Cloud customer, if you are an admin managing a Citrix Cloud account, then the chances are extremely high that all those services are sending control plane data and telemetry data to the Citrix Cloud control plane, because that is how the cloud operates, right? So if you've got a cloud service, it is sending data constantly to the control plane. But what kind of data is that? Well, control data is, as the name implies, data that is essential for a service to operate as a cloud service. There is constant back and forth between the control plane and the service instance in order for the service to function. So one of those examples could be somebody logging on and launching an app. So when your user logs on, a control event is sent to the control plane from your service saying, hey, here's a user, here's a user's ID, here's the time when they logged on, here's the location that they logged on from. Provide this person access to everything that they need access to. That is the first control event. Then once a user logs on, they're going to be presented with some apps and desktops. The user goes and clicks on an app. Then a second event gets sent to the control plane saying, hey, this user is trying to access Word. Please give him access. So control data is very benign data that gets exchanged between a cloud service and the Citrix Cloud control plane in order for that service to provide value and services back to the end user. Now, for on-prem, as I mentioned earlier, we do not collect any data without your know-how. So for an on-prem data source to send data to the control plane, you've got to do some configuration work. You've got to install agents. You've got to turn on the data faucet for data to flow back and forth between Citrix Cloud and your on-prem data source. So I just mentioned that because I didn't want to scare people off. I didn't want you all thinking that Citrix has suddenly started to pull data from your on-prem sources. No, we don't do that. So every which way you look at it, whether it's a cloud service or it's an on-prem service with the right agents installed, all of them get discovered when you run the discovery routine. So your on-prem environment, so let's say you got some on-prem NetScalers. Let's say you got an on-prem XenApp and XenDesktop site. Those will not get discovered here at all if they don't have the relevant agents installed on them. So once you run the discovery routine, and if the agents are installed, your on-prem sites will get discovered here as well. But then again, we don't collect data from those sites without your consent. So even if they get discovered, you still need to go there and turn on data processing. So for example, here, I have a virtual apps and desktops card that has 2 sites in it. So let me click on the site. So it tells me I've got 2 sites. So let me expand it. It tells me configuration incomplete, and it says I've got to install an agent for this site to work. There are some advanced features that are available only when an agent is installed, but otherwise for your site to be connected to Citrix Cloud, you've got to do what's called site aggregation. And once your site is aggregated and added to Citrix Cloud, then you've got to come here and turn on data processing. So long and short of this discussion, and the reason why I spent so much of time explaining this is because all the sites and Citrix products that you own and manage are available or are discovered for you under settings data sources. And all you need to do to turn on analytics for a cloud site is to go and turn on data processing. And if it is an on-prem site, then you've got to first install some agents, get your sites discovered, and then turn on data processing. So that's pretty much how Citrix Analytics works. We do not collect any data from your environment without your consent. So with that, let us move to the next step. So we've looked at how turnkey data processing works. We've looked at how how you can turn on analytics. So now let's look at how security analytics works. Now, once you turn on analytics, it takes us a couple of weeks to process all that raw data and to build a baseline of all that data. So what do we mean by a baseline? So because Citrix is collecting all this control plane and telemetry data from your environment, we are able to produce unique user profiles for every Citrix user in your environment. So anybody who's using the correct version of receiver, and by the way, I use the word correct very carefully. So Citrix Analytics only supports XenApp and XenDesktop version 7.16 and above. So we don't support LTSR today. And with Gateway, again, we only support the versions that were the 10.x or 11.x. I need to go back and check in the documentation. But essentially, the point I'm trying to make here is that we discover your users, but we only discover the Citrix users. And even within your Citrix users, we only discover Citrix users who are using the analytics compatible versions of receiver or gateway. So once those users get discovered, it takes us a couple of weeks to build a baseline profile. And then we start running machine learning algorithms every 15 minutes to look for anomalies in their behavior. So let's say a new event comes in after the baseline is created, and the new event corresponds to NetScaler Gateway. And the new event tells me that Georgina has logged in from Prague at 11 p.m. Now that is probably not in line with all the behavior she's been exhibiting all along. So that becomes a risk indicator. So we show a risk indicator, we increase a risk score, and we display it in the UI. So that way, you're saved, or rather your security teams are saved the effort of going through hundreds or thousands of logs, and instead just focus on the incident that has been reported to them through a Citrix product. So this is what your threat intel dashboard looks like. All you need to do is click on that user, look at the risk timeline, and over here you can see that a couple of risk indicators have already been triggered. So this person has triggered an authorization failure event. Authorization failure risk indicator. So let's click on the risk indicator. So this is coming from NetScaler Gateway, and you can scroll down. You can look at all the raw data corresponding to that event. And as I was saying earlier, it takes sometimes tens, hundreds, and even thousands of events for us to detect an anomaly. So over here, rather than going through all these events, all your security admin needs to do is focus on that one indicator that was raised. But if they are still interested, they can go in and look at all the raw data. So in this case, looks like several risk indicators have been raised. There is this other indicator that is coming from Zenapin Desktop, and it tells us that she has been using some apps in an unusual way. There's again a logon access event that is coming from ShareFile that says that this person's logged on at a weird time and a weird location. So instead of looking at hundreds and thousands of logs, all that a security admin needs to then focus on are these 4 risk indicators. Now, based on these risk indicators, the administrator, the security admin, can either choose to take action on that user right then and there. So this person, the administrator, can either go log off this user using Gateway, or they can start session recording in Desktop, or they can just expire all the links or disable the user in ShareFile. They can do all of this, click OK, and they're good to go. So that is the example of closed loop action. So we don't just show you a lot of alerts, we also allow you to take action on that user. And by the way, all of this is being done using telemetry data and control plane data that is coming from products that you folks own and configure. So, those are some of the key security features that I wanted to talk about. But there is one more thing I'm going to talk about before I go back to advanced features. So,
Matthew.
Yep.
If I understand correctly, this seems from what you just showed us can be very time-consuming for a security administrator to handle all the different types of events that comes on a daily basis, over a week, and trying to correlate that information. But what you guys are doing with Citrix Analytics is able to take all that event logs data from different data sources, do the telemetry on it, create a correlation to give these administrators actionable insights, and then create like a policy concept around it to give certain actions based on certain things that are triggered. But this seems like it could be very time-saving for a lot of our security administrators, because I've had customers that are inundated with security logs, and they just cannot find enough time in the day to try to go through everything to identify certain trends they're seeing within their environment, especially over a course period of time.
That is really well put, Rich. I couldn't have said that better. Thanks a lot. Yes, that is exactly what I was trying to say. Excellent. So, just as Rich said, right? We take all the data from various different sources, we correlate it, and we save your security admin a lot of time. The one other feature that I wanted to show you all, which both you and your security admins will be pretty interested in, is the user profiles. So in this case, for example, using the Citrix data that is coming into Citrix Analytics, we can actually profile a user and look at their consumption trends. So for example, you can see what apps they use. You can look at what devices they use. You can see what locations they have been in, and also visualize some of that data. So in this case, for example, it tells me that this person has been, on multiple continents over the past 1 month. Now, what we are doing, and I'm sure a lot of you probably have that question in your mind already. Hey, you're collecting all this data, you're profiling the users, but how do you know your profiles are accurate? Because these are, pretty generic profiles. So the thing is, for example, some users might travel more than the others, right? They might be in a sales role, travel a lot. So how do you make sure that they get profiled correctly? Well, the answer to that is we also get data from Active Directory. So this is a new integration. I'm going to talk about it when I talk about advanced features. But now that we have Active Directory support, we can actually make sure that we understand the user's role when raising alerts for that particular user. So going back to analytics, those were the key features that I wanted to talk about. And now I'm going to go back to the presentation and talk about a few of the more advanced features that we have in the product today. I'll talk about this quickly, and then we go back into a second shorter demo. So the first thing, and I'm pretty sure some of you probably already had this question in your minds. Hey, you're collecting all this data. You're not showing me what it is, but you're just showing me a few alerts. Can I go and play with the data myself? And the answer is yes. As a Citrix admin, you can log on to Citrix Analytics today. Go to the search area and actually access the raw events and search through them. So there are multiple applications for the raw data. So your security teams can use this for root cause analysis or threat investigation. You as a Citrix admin can use the same data to look at people's logon trends, look at what apps they use. So basically usage and performance. So basically you do have access to the raw data. You can just export it to a CSV file and then analyze that data. So that's available today. Another important feature. Now, this is something that is coming soon, but I wanted to talk about it nevertheless. People often ask me, hey, you got all these risk indicators, but how do we trust your machine learning algorithms? I mean, I want to have my own thresholds and I want to have my own conditions. Great. So in the next few releases, we plan to release a new feature called real-time analytics and custom indicators. Using custom indicators, you can set your own thresholds and get alerted when certain conditions are met. Then the other key takeaway, is the fact that Citrix Analytics provides you some key features from across multiple different products. So today, a lot of our customers use a whole host of products for tracking events and getting alerted. So, for example, we've seen people using Observe IT for features that are similar to session recording. A lot of our customers use Splunk for querying a huge volume of data and looking for trends. And then they use products like Securonix and Exabeam for intelligent insights into security events. What Citrix Analytics does is combine all of these features into one simple offering, so that way you don't have to use multiple tools. So in my demo, I'm going to talk about that as well. And then last but not the least, as part of our advanced feature set, we now also support threat intel feeds from Microsoft sources. So all you need to do is connect your Microsoft account to Citrix Analytics, and then we use the Microsoft Security Graph API to pull threat intel feeds from Azure AD Identity Protection and Windows ATP today. and those get displayed in the as risk indicators as well. So I'm going to talk about those real quick in the demo. So again, it's a very simple demo, very easy to see all these features. So let's start with the simplest one, which is Microsoft integration. So here is what a Microsoft risk indicator would look like. So the threat intel feeds come from Microsoft, and here is something that came from Azure AD Identity Protection. It's a threat indicator that came in from there. We just take it as it is and display it for you in in Citrix Analytics. Setting this up is very simple. Go to Settings, Data Sources, you scroll down, and it says Microsoft Security Graph. Setting it up is pretty simple. As I said, in my environment, it's already turned on. But the way you turn it on is, you see a plus button like this. You click it, enter your Microsoft credentials, and you're off to the races. Another feature that I spoke about was self-service search. So you can click on search, and all your raw data gets displayed over here. So you can pretty much export all of this data to a CSV file and look for trends, look for usage, look for performance insights within the same data set. Then we spoke about, let me just recollect. I'm growing old and I've clearly forgotten what I was talking about. So we look at actions. So a lot of our customers I've seen use Observe IT for recording the user's screens when certain threat alerts are displayed. So you can do the same thing with Citrix Analytics. So for example, I can go to Settings, Rules, and I can actually set up a rule to start session recording in real time when somebody's risk score exceeds 90. So I can go here, I can start session recording, click apply, give it a name, and create the rule. And once the rule gets created, as soon as somebody's risk score exceeds 90, session recording will get started. You as a Zen desktop administrator will know when that happens, and you have full control over that session now. You can go there, you can continue to record the session, you can stop session recording, share the recording with your security teams, and so on and so forth. And then last but not the least is what a lot of our customers often ask for, which is Splunk integration. So customers are like, hey, you know what, this is all excellent, but I don't want to go to yet another UI to view things. Can you just send all this data to Splunk? And we do provide that as well. So this is my real environment. So I can go to Settings, Data Sources, click on Splunk, so you can get started. And getting started is very easy. Provide your Splunk credentials, download a config file, and then run the config file on your Splunk server. And the reason we've taken this approach is so you don't have to go through the pain of setting things up. So all you need to do is download the config file, run it on your Splunk server, and then we connect your Splunk instance to the Kafka bus that is in our cloud instance. And it's a multi-tenant solution, so you get your own Kafka bus, and data that is placed on the Kafka bus then gets pushed to your Splunk server. These are features that your security team will be extremely interested in. But guess what? Because you own these environments, you can now play a more strategic role in then enabling your security team to get all these events, get this data, and secure your environment. Now, coming back to the original idea where we spoke about how human error can be prevented using analytics. So maybe one of your questions is, hey, how do you detect human error? How do you know that somebody did something wrong? Well, that is where user profiling comes in. So we constantly profile people using a collection of events. So we collect events when people click on links. We collect events when somebody launches an app. We collect events when somebody logs on to the Netscaler, and so on and so forth. So there is a collection of about 300 plus events that we collect today. And these events go into building the user's profile. So if the user does something that they were not supposed to, so for example, let us take phishing links, right? On a constant basis, we feed all these risky links into our system. So our system knows what is risky and what is not. So for example, if I go back to my search window, you will see under access control, we've listed a whole bunch of events that pertain to people clicking on risky links. And we also have categorized all the links, so we know what these links are. So basically, because we've trained our system to understand human behavior, rather than setting up, hard and fast, black and white security policies, we allow you to understand user behavior by profiling your users, studying them, and setting up guardrails when they do something risky. So that's how Citrix Analytics works. I did, quickly walk you all through some of the key features. Just one last thing before I, hand it off for Q&A. I do have a section on data itself. I mean, so people often ask me, okay, what's under the hood? What does the data look like? So now let's look at what the data looks like. Now, all the events that come to us are discrete events that are encoded in JSON. So for those of you who are NetScaler administrators or Zendesk administrators, the answer to your question is no, we are not collecting syslogs. We are not collecting crash dumps, core dumps, and other logs that are often very expensive to process for the customer, right? So any Splunk customer knows that it's very expensive to send data to an analytics provider, because most analytics vendors consume data that are logs and that are pretty bulky in nature. Citrix Analytics, on the other hand, has instrumented products to send payloads that are extremely small. So every event is about 2 KB, and Citrix, for example, sends all its data to Citrix Analytics. And for a 10,000 employee company, which sends about 1 million+ events to analytics every day, our daily upload rate is a few megs. So we are not talking about gigs of data. You'll be sending us a few megs of data every day. Now let me prove that to you. So this is what an average event looks like. So I'm going to expand the event. This is what an event looks like. It's encoded in JSON. It's going to have a few data points, and this is what an event looks like. So we collect. There's a wide variety of events that we can collect. About, like I said, about 300 of them, and the events are generated by different products. So we just take them, we correlate them, apply machine learning, and then build user profiles and show you anomalies. So this is what the data looks like. As part of our GDPR compliance initiative, every one of these events and data points has been documented and put in our public-facing documentation. So if you go to docs.citrix.com, click on Analytics, and go to Data Governance. Under the Data Governance page, there is an appendix that has a list of every single data point that we collect from our customers today. And because you have access to the raw data, you can check it out for yourself. Another quick point on data governance, we are actively working on SOC 2 compliance for ourselves, and all the data of customers is retained for 13 months, and after that we de-identify it. But if you want to try out Citrix Analytics, if you just want to do a trial, the trial itself is a 60-day, entirely free, no questions asked trial, and your data gets deleted after 90 days, 90. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I know all of you have questions for me at this point, so I'm going to pause and take questions.
So thank you, Matthew. That was a great presentation and demo of Citrix Analytics and the benefits it can provide. As Matthew mentioned, this would be a great time for any question that you may have. You can either put it into the question bar within your GoToWebinar, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask it verbally. So we'll give it a minute or two to see if there are any questions. We're getting up on the hour here. We appreciate your time and your patience thus far. Folks out there are kind of pondering what questions they would like to ask. Just to give you a heads up, if you look in the webinar, we also uploaded a handout, which is a solution brief on Citrix Analytics. So I know this was some good content, but a couple of days might go by. You want to kind of read up on some additional information. You can download this handout, and it kind of gives you a review of some of the main bullet points Matthew discussed today. Matthew, I think we might have a shy group today in regards to the questions. Just as a recap, like I said, it was a great session. If you'd like to find out more information, or if you have a question that comes to you later on today or at a later time, feel free to reach out to your Citrix counterpart. And we will get somebody in contact with you to answer those questions or follow up if you have any additional questions, concern, or interest in Citrix Analytics.
Excellent.
Matthew, can we go?
Yeah.
Can we go back to the slide deck there?
Sure.
And just want to kind of bring up the next slide. So we have a couple upcoming webinars. We appreciate you taking the time out to join these sessions. What we have been doing is working and providing a monthly webinar. So every month, typically toward the end of the month, we're going to have a webinar focused on different content to provide you more information on Citrix products and solutions. So one of the next upcoming webinars is going to be March 20th, which is going to be more focused on healthcare, so helping health and human services go digital. And then one after that will be March 27th, where we're going to talk about Citrix hybrid multi-cloud solution for Citrix ADC in the cloud. We're focused on using your Citrix ADC, formerly known as NetScaler, in Azure and GCP. So we'll give you an overview of our strategy, also kind of talk about what we're doing with Azure and GCP, and kind of walk you through a guided demo of how to set up the ADC in both environments. And if you want to register or get caught up on additional webinars, you can register at the link here. I will also post it in the chat for you to register. And then the next thing before we close out is I want to bring your attention to our upcoming customer-facing session called Citrix Synergy. If you haven't had a chance to attend Citrix Synergy, this is a great opportunity to meet other Citrix co-workers, as well as product managers such as Matthew here, who are focused on the product. You can meet other Citrix customers that are leveraging the product. It's a great opportunity to engage into these deep technical conversations, high-level business conversations, to learn more about what Citrix is doing, our vision, our strategy, and other customer success that are occurring with our solution. So you can see coming May 21st to the 23rd, we'll be in Georgia with Citrix Synergy, and you can visit www.citrixsynergy.com to get additional information. Feel free to talk to your Citrix representative to get any additional information as far as travel and registration information. With that being said, we're coming up on the hour. I'd like to thank everybody for their time, for joining us today, and hope you find great value out of these sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for your time.
Thank you, Rich.